write a page, you take a week. I see the end before you even speak.
Check.
You're still debating, I'm 10 steps ahead. By the time you blink, I've already fled. Laser focus, mind's in orbit. I decode the game before they sort it. Slow me down, nah, not a chance. I'm the glitch they never planned.
She's too fast. She's too loud.
It's gotta be AI.
Not normal.
There are few figures more insufferably modern than the false dissident, that person who presents themselves as rebellious, free, awake, incorruptible, when what they really want is something far more ordinary and far less heroic, to become, in turn, the room's moral authority. It is not truth they are after, but control over the narrative. They do not want to open up a space for doubt. They want to move their furniture into it, hang their dogmas on the wall, and treat every contradiction as further proof of everybody else's stupidity. That is the whole difference between resisting an orthodoxy and wanting to found a new one. And if this episode is good for anything, maybe it is to remind us of this. Being against something does not make you lucid. It can just make you theatrical. That trap is much more common than people like to admit because it flatters several human needs at once. First, the need for identity. Social identity theory shows that we do not think of ourselves only as individuals, but also as members of groups that give meaning to who we are and to the way we are supposed to see the world. Dissent can then become less a critical practice than a flattering form of belonging. You are no longer examining an idea, you are inhabiting a role. You become the one who sees clearly, the one who refuses the lie, the ones who are not fooled. The problem, obviously, is that the moment an identity provides that much symbolic prestige, it becomes very difficult to question without shaking the ego carrying it. Critical thinking then turns into a costume of superiority. And as everyone knows, the costume often ends up wearing the person who claims to be wearing it. Cognitive psychology adds an even less flattering layer. Confirmation bias pushes each of us to seek out, interpret, and retain whatever reinforces our existing beliefs, often without realizing it. In other words, the more someone has built themselves around being against the dominant narrative, the more likely they may be to filter reality in ways that confirm they are right to be against it. The self-proclaimed dissident can then become exactly what they claim to denounce: someone who selects their evidence, ignores whatever contradicts them, caricatures their opponents, and mistakes their internal coherence for proof of truth. On top of that comes cognitive dissonance. When information contradicts a heavily invested identity, the resulting psychological discomfort often pushes people not to revise their position, but to rationalize, minimize, or reject whatever disturbs it. Put simply, the more a posture becomes part of identity, the more impermeable it becomes. It is no longer a thought, it is a fortress. And that is where the parallel with group dynamics becomes deliciously hypocritical. A great many people who imagine themselves anti-conformist end up reproducing almost perfectly the same mechanisms they condemn in The Other Side: coded language, internal references, symbolic rewards for the most orthodox members, suspicion toward the lukewarm, contempt for nuance, excommunication for those who deviate. Britannica reminds us that groupthink refers to the tendency of cohesive groups to accept a viewpoint perceived as consensual, even when it is neither optimal nor rigorously examined. That is the punchline. Some communities that experience themselves as iconoclastic become, in reality, extraordinarily disciplinary. They are not thinking against the group. They are thinking inside a new pack, with a new liturgy and new heretics. They did not break the altar. They just changed the name of the god. Social media obviously worsens the problem because it rewards everything that is identity-based, emotional, and mobilizing. The American Psychological Association points out that misinformation and misleading content spread more easily when they align with personal identity or group norms, when they are novel, and when they trigger strong emotions. Which means a dissident posture can very quickly become a marketplace of certainty. The more a message divides, shocks, and simplifies, the more it circulates. And the more it circulates, the more the person carrying it can begin to confuse engagement with infallibility. They are no longer looking for what is true. They are optimizing adhesion. They are no longer opening questions. They are producing fuel for their community. And that is how some anti-system figures become little more than narrative entrepreneurs, fascinated less by the complexity of reality than by their own role as blazing truth-tellers. So the crucial point is not to say that all dissent is suspect. That would be stupid, lazy, and completely contrary to what this episode is trying to defend. The point is to remind us that real dissent accepts being questioned. It does not feed on its own staging. It knows truth does not belong to it, that truth is something we search for, correct, refine. False dissent, by contrast, demands to be believed. It turns every disagreement into proof of blindness, every contradiction into hostility, every complexity into betrayal. It does not liberate thought, it privatizes truth. And frankly, human history is already overflowing with people convinced they are the only ones who see clearly. We did not need a new franchise. So the real question to leave hanging is not, who is the real dissident? The real question is much more useful. Does my position make me more rigorous, more open to doubt, more demanding toward my own certainties? Or does it simply make me more in love with my role? If dissent can no longer tolerate contradiction, it stops being an intellectual breath of air. It becomes a new catechism with better visuals and exactly the same underlying vice. If this episode spoke to you, keep the conversation going on my website. You'll find the full world of ink and acid there, my books, my essays, my music, and the complete scripts for the podcast. In other words, enough material to keep thinking, reading, rereading, and above all, to avoid confusing critical thought with a well-marketed personality cult.
Too fast. Too much. She thinks too big. She moves too quick. Not normal.
I write a page, you take a week. I see the end before you even speak.
Check.
You're still debating, I'm 10 steps ahead. By the time you blink, I've already fled. Laser focus, minds in orbit. I decode the game before they sort it. Slow me down? Nah, not a chance. I'm the glitch they never planned.
She's too fast. She's too loud.
It's gotta be AI.
Not normal.
Who am I? An error, a misfit, a shadow they fear. Who am I? Too quick, too sharp, or just too clear? Who am I? A tempest coated in fire and steel. Who am I? I'm me, and that's too real.
To a slower flow. Confidence dripping in every line.
They say I move like I don't belong. I build worlds while they sing the same song. One step, two step, I break the mold. Blueprints burned, I make my own gold. She's working too fast, must be a cheat. Nah, just a mind, they can't compete. She's got no patience, she's over the top. Nah, just a vision that won't be stopped.
Too fast. Too